Right here. Go ahead, my brother.
Deacon Adams, how are you? This is
I'm
George
fine,
Struthers
thank you.
from 44112 News coming down here to tape your show. Coming in here to tape your show today, and we're taping you live on both Facebook and the website 44112 News.
All right.
It's a pleasure to be here with you.
All right, thank you. Go ahead, sister.
And thank you for being here at George Struthers and come a long way.
Yeah.
and done a lot of things and exposed a lot of things as well. And you're exposing me now. Okay, but today we're going to open up the blinds a little bit later because I wanted to talk about a subject matter I think is pretty important now. And the subject is discipline, abuse, and the undisciplined child. And again, like I said, I'm going to open up the lines later. I wonder if you remember these things, these terms that you may have heard people say, like, I brought you here and I'll take you out of here. Or, I'll beat your ass, you know? Yes. Or, boy, girl, don't you raise your voice at me. Or, I'm going to give you a whipping. Or, if you don't do blank, I'm going to give you a whipping. Or, don't you ever, or I'll break your neck. Okay, well, I can say each parent has their own way of disciplining their child. It could be good or bad, or it could damage a child for life. You got to make sure you do not damage that child for life. And let's say a child acts bad or does bad, or they would, doing something that they would want to do. How would you define bad? Do you define bad as stealing, talking back to an adult, beating or bullying another child, or killing an animal, or not obeying your instructions? How would you determine how much of what kind of discipline your child would have? Should you ignore your child's behavior? Should you whip them with your hand, a switch off a tree, a belt, a broomstick, an electrical cord, or a rock, or pull a gun or knife on them? What defines discipline and what defines abuse? Should you allow your child to grow up undisciplined because you're not allowed to strike them because of what maybe other people say, or what maybe your own convictions? What would happen if you changed your attitude about discipline and started using positive approaches? Would you lose your child, or is this always a winner to do positive approaches to discipline? And how would you define abuse? Is abuse only physical, or could it be also verbal, spiritual, mental, emotional, or social? I mean, like you take your child away from his environment, like you cause him to be antisocial. And I'm going to read what Proverbs says. Proverbs 20:11 says, even a child is known by his doings, whether his work be pure or whether it be right. Exodus 20:12 says, let me find it here. 20:12 says, honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. And then we have Proverbs 22:6, which says, let's see if I can find Proverbs 22:6. And that says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Then we have Ephesians 6:1-4, which says, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor thy father and thy mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with thee, and thou mayest live long on the earth. And ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. And then last but not least, we have 1 Corinthians 13:11, which says, when I was a child, I spake as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child, but when I became a man, I put away childish things. I believe that up to the age of 2, and this is my personal opinion, your parents should avoid striking their child, because at this age, the young one had just come into the world and is just learning. By the age of 3, the child should be controlled, obedient, and semi-self-disciplined. If not, then one really has to step one's game up on discipline. And depending on the circumstances and severity of the act and the age of the child, and it depends on how harsh the discipline should be. Discipline turns into abuse when you don't explain to the child what he's being disciplined for, and the child is unable to understand the logic behind the discipline. It becomes abuse when you verbally instigate the child by cursing at them, calling them his or her name, putting them down to a point of lowering their self-esteem. It becomes abuse when you repeatedly use excessive force at times when just a verbal understanding could have solved the problem. It becomes abuse when you use damaging objects like extension cords, sticks with thorns and nails, or literally put marks on the child that readily go away at the same time the child could not understand the reasoning behind the mark. I was not a bad child myself, but there was a time when an older child around me influenced me to do something. My brother told on us and I got a whipping. To this day, I'm so grateful that I got a whipping, that it opened my eyes to what could have possibly turned into the worst thing if the behavior was never checked and essentially never stopped. Some children know what they're doing is wrong, but sometimes it's taken by influence or temptation and don't always realize what they're doing is wrong until someone reminds them harshly or warns them or shocks them into reality. I recently had a situation in my family where my children and grandchildren were in the park taking pictures, and one of my grandchildren just would not sit down. I also had a little wild child that was about 2, he was running around, but he was sitting down, but he was like kind of playing at the same time. It seems he got this other child, who was like about 4 years old, got angrier and angrier. The next thing I know, he was balling up his fists, and if he was like a cartoon, it would be like he was turning into a Hulk. His face was turning green and steam was coming out of his nose and ears, and he was just shaking. And this is literally, he really was shaking, like something was wrong with him, And he got up and came charging at his mother. Before he struck his mother, I caught him and gave him the whipping of his life. I whipped him so hard that his pants fell down. I warned him never to strike at his mother, and of course he cried, and later I walked over to my daughter who was comforting him, and I could tell she was mad at me at first, but I asked why he was so angry at her. She said he wanted to play on the swings, and that was before we started taking pictures. I didn't see a problem with that, so I told him to let him play on the swings, and I asked him, is that what you wanted to do, play on the swings? He stopped crying immediately, said yes. And it was almost like he never was crying at all. And so my daughter was going to allow him to swing for a few minutes until we got started taking pictures again. But then meanwhile, my oldest son, now my children are grown now, so they got their whippings and whatever, So my oldest son had warned me that you can't award him for his bad behavior. So he was right. And then I told my daughter, well, let's allow him to swing after he be good, and then pose for pictures. After that, he was smiling and posing, and if you looked at the pictures today, it was like nothing had happened. I was even sitting next to him, and he was smiling, and it was like an angel. I don't call myself I kind of call myself whipping the devil out of him. And but anyhow, my daughter realizes she has been allowing him to strike her for a long time, and he went undisciplined until Grandma came along. Now, if we never whipped him or whatever, I wonder what happened. But anyway, we got to go into a break. But I want to hear from the callers.
All right, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, right here we're going to have a break and we'll be right back.
Not only are we streaming live at newstalkcleveland.com, but you can stay connected to what we're up to by joining our Facebook fan page and following us on Twitter. Just type in Newstalk 4